Good evening, one and all. So I think we'll straight away get to the topic. As sir told, we can expect around 8 questions. That's an average in GS1 from geography, and that's quite a significant number. And in my experience, I feel it's an area which you can score pretty well. Let me share a small experience of mine. In my first mains, that was in 2016, I had just attempted 14 out of 20 questions in GS1 paper. And I got 114 marks. That was the maximum marks I think I've got probably over the years in GS. In 14 questions, that's an average of 8 marks per question. And the questions at that time were 12.5 marks. So the point I'm trying to make, and I attempted all geography questions and some of the society questions, history, I left most of the questions. So the point I'm trying to make is that UPSC gives good marks for well attempted questions. Most of the test series, you might get a average marks. Even if you write very well, you might not get beyond some marks. But in my experience, I feel UPSC gives pretty good marks for well attempted questions. And geography is one area in general studies where you can give a good attempt, a good answer. And now coming to the answer writing part of geography. The answer writing structure of the answer, it's pretty basic. It's a standard introduction, body, conclusion. It works there as well. And one more thing in geography is that you can make maximum points, unlike probably society or history. Most of the geography questions can be answered, especially the body part of the questions can be answered in points. So I'll just give a general approach to how us to approach a geography question and write a good answer. The first step is to read the question thoroughly and understand the requirement of the question, what UPSC is trying to get from you in terms of the question. Maybe we can discuss with one example in the beginning. So I'll just share a question with you all. Just give me 1 second, please. So is it visible? Nikhil sir, I hope this is visible. Nikhil sir? Okay. So first thing is to how to analyze the question or how to read the question. Here the question is, ocean warming has caused coral reef depletion via bleaching as well as deadly outbreak of diseases examined. I think in general answer writing session, you might have been accustomed to how to analyze a question and to see what is the requirement from the question. And here, ocean warming, it's a general sentence, and the directive given by UPSC is to examine, directive given by the examiner is to examine that sentence. So the first step in writing a geography answer is to analyze the question, identify the key points which have, or key areas which have been referred to in the question, and then answer accordingly. Here, ocean warming has been mentioned, coral reef depletion has been mentioned, and then bleaching and outbreak of diseases have been mentioned. So here, your objective is to examine this sentence and give a brief 150 mark answer to it. And for having this sense of writing answers, here you should say ocean warming has caused coral reef depletion. So your introduction can actually mention how ocean warming has caused coral reef depletion. And I can just run through the answer I have written. This is just a mock answer I have written some time back. It might not be the perfect answer. It's just to give a sense of how you can approach this question. So initial thing here is ocean warming is a part of global warming. So you can just mention in the introduction that global warming, what is the cause of global warming, and how global warming leads to ocean warming. Oceans absorb most of the heat in the atmosphere. So global warming leads to ocean warming. And now next step is to explain how ocean warming causes coral reef depletion. And here there are two parts of this question, that is bleaching as well as deadly outbreak of diseases, that is in zootics. So now you have to explain in the answer how ocean warming causes bleaching. So, corals are a symbiotic association between zooxanthellae and coral polyp. So bleaching causes expulsion of zooxanthellae. And here the step is by giving, and it's a logical fashion, how warming leads to coral bleaching. It's a logical fashion. So in geography, you can explain it through a flow chart. There is no need to write paragraphs here. So here you can see I've not written a paragraph. Even points also you can avoid in some of these situations. Here the approach is to just explain the logical fashion. And the advantage of this kind of answer writing, some of the questions you can use this. The advantage is that one thing, you need not write a lot. You can save your words, you can save your time, and it becomes much more attractive and it becomes much more concise. So here I've just explained it, how the warming causes expulsion of zooxanthellae, which is exactly what bleaching is. And the next one is enzootic diseases. That is how increased ocean temperature leads to outbreak of diseases. That also can be explained in a logical fashion. So my point here is that one of the techniques in writing a geographical answer, or writing an answer in geography, is that some of these questions are quite logical based questions or stepwise questions, and here you can use extensively flowcharts in explaining the answer. So once we have had the introduction, then we have the body and we have the conclusion. So introduction, I told, introduction can be used as a as a link between the sentence in the question and the body which you are trying to write. For example, here it was ocean warming, and the thing which we are trying to explain was bleaching and zoonosis. So ocean warming, you can use global warming, cause of global warming, which leads to ocean warming because oceans absorb maximum temperature or maximum heat. So that is your link from the sentence in the question to the answer you are trying to write. So introductions can be made in that fashion for questions which come from physical geography part. And then you can use flowcharts, diagrams, maps, etc. in the body to make your point. Excuse me. And then sorry, this got interrupted. And next one I was referring to was the use of diagrams. Here, since there is no direct way of putting a diagram in case of such a question here, so what I did was just to add an area where to show the extent of coral bleaching, where all it happens. The thing with geography questions is that most of the questions you can add one diagram or one map or maybe a flow chart. This can be used as a technique. As I told earlier, thing with geography is that a good attempt, a good concise answer with good diagrams can fetch you good marks, that is above average marks. So try to add such good diagrams or meaningful diagrams, relevant diagrams. Here, since correlation has mentioned keyword in question, you can add the extent or areas of coral reef depletion, a map of that in the answer, body of the answer. And here I'll also it's kind of a technique as well, because it's a very straightforward question. Coral reef depletion leading to bleaching, you don't have a lot of points there, as well as zoonosis. Again, you don't have a lot of points if you write it directly. So if you want to increase your content, you can use maps or diagrams to enrich your content. And one more thing here I have used is use of examples and case studies. In coral reef depletion, ocean warming is there, and causes of ocean warming you can mention, like El Nino, regional rise of temperature caused by El Nino or Indian Ocean dipole leads to regional rise in sea temperature, which causes coral bleaching in those areas. And you can mention a few examples or few case studies here to enrich your answer. And actually, I have not given a proper conclusion to this answer. Warming related acidification and decrease also adversely affect coral reefs. Probably you can add a conclusion to this answer. Probably it can be how to, a way forward, how to, or you can say IPCC report you can add, which indicates rise in increase in ocean warming, which can lead to wide scale destruction of coral reefs. Such a way forward or current scenario can be added to the conclusion. So my point was, it's again introduction, body, conclusion. How to structure the introduction? For that, first thing you have to do is to identify the question. Analyze the question, identify the requirement of the question. If there is a sentence, if there is a statement in the question, you have to get from that statement to the body of the answer you are writing. There should be a link between that statement and what you are trying to put in your body. So that should be the introduction. It can be in different ways. It can be through some statistical, here you can also put out some statistics. Ocean warming has caused, some El Nino years have caused increased coral reef depletion or coral bleaching. Any such joinder between the statement in the question and the body you are trying to make can be used as an introduction. Introduction should be brief, especially for 10 marks questions. Do not try to write probably more than 1 or 2 sentences, because you will lose out on your body. Similarly, make your body the main substance of the answer, that is what is being asked. So try to address that. And in most of the questions in physical geography, you can use diagrams, you can use maps, you can use logical flowcharts. You do not have to write paragraphs. Logical flowcharts is to show a cause-effect relationship or a logical fashion of events that are happening. And this will give you edge in 2 ways. One, it makes your clarity evident, and it makes it easier for the examiner to identify your points. And then coming to the conclusion. The thing is, to be frank, I have missed out on conclusion in some of my answers. Probably that had resulted in reduced marks. So at best, try to give a conclusion. Even if it's a 1-sentence conclusion, try to give a conclusion. Make that a habit. Only if it's very extreme, you do not have any time left, skip the conclusion. Otherwise, always try to give the conclusion. So that's the basic structure of a geography answer. And one point I would try to make here is the problem which I faced while writing the answer. Even if you have the time frame or the time constraint in which you have to write the answer, so the main demand or main issue you might face during the actual exam is to read the question, analyze it, and structure an answer in your mind. This time that takes from reading the question to making a brief structure in your mind and writing the answer, this time should be minimized. For this, one technique that helped me was, one is to write a lot of test series and attempt a lot of practice papers. In addition to that, one thing you can do is go through a lot of questions. In addition to the answer writing you do, go download test series or questions and solutions from different sources. Go through the questions, try to structure answer and run through the solution. Do this for a lot number of questions. After your regular studies, after you write answers for the day, when you are tired or when you're bored, just download some papers, see the questions, structure an answer in your mind, and run through the solution. And do this repeatedly daily. This will help you to actually reduce the time you take to see the question, analyze it, structure, and then start writing. So this practice can help you there. And also go through model answers of toppers that you can get from the internet. This will also help you to better structure your answers. So that is the general points, and I'll just mention a few points which I've noted. So again, basic structures: introduction, body, conclusion. Introduction should be to link the question or the statement in the question to the content you are going to write. Then write the content. Then conclusion, brief conclusion. Add diagrams or maps or flowcharts. Do this, and for you to have good diagrams or maps or flowcharts, you have to practice. Make a separate diagram book, map book, or even when you're making notes, instead of writing it in paragraphs, try to put it out in diagrams. Try to make flowcharts while making notes. These exercises will help you to probably spontaneously make a diagram or flowchart in the actual exam. And thing with maps or diagrams is, if there are two, I feel from my perspective, there are two kinds of questions. One is you know the answer and you know a lot of information, but there is a constraint, there is a word limit, there is a time limit. So in that case, you have to reduce the content that you're going to put in the paper. Another issue is, you do not know a lot, but the requirement of the or marks of the question is 15 marks, but you do not know a lot. So in first case, your goal is to reduce the content or put out the relevant content that you have, while in the second case, your goal is to expand the limited content you have so that you put out a good answer. So this also you should keep in mind, especially with, I think, geography optional students might face this problem, because some of the questions we know a lot of. I'm a geography optional student, so we have a lot of information regarding some of the questions. So in that case, we should be very careful that we do not overshoot. We do not write a lot on lot of points. As a rule of thumb, you can say for a 10 marker, maybe you can write around 6 to 8 points. That's in total content in the content. Probably for 15 marker, you can write around 10 to 12 points. So that can be a rule of thumb. It can be altered. And another very important thing to note is that on a particular dimension. So for instance, in this question, we have, one is the introduction. So that's a point. Global warming and ocean warming has been linked. Another is bleaching. So we have 2-3 points in bleaching, and do not try to explain a single dimension too much. So that's a trap you can get into. You might feel the need that you need to explain. So try to limit the amount of information you put in a particular dimension or particular point. Do not go overboard with one single point. So your goal is to bring in maximum points or maximum dimensions. So do not try to go overboard with a particular point or particular dimension. And again, you should keep in mind the marks. I think, of course, you know that UPSC sometimes keeps surprising us with different marks of questions. So obviously, first thing is you should check the marks and the word limit of each question before you are attempting. Okay. Any specific points with geography? People can also ask doubts, if any specific doubts. Okay, Saurav, here can we give the definition of coral reefs with examples instead of making the connect with the body as you have written? Definition of coral reefs with examples. Coral reef depletion. it wouldn't be my choice to give a definition of coral reef here, because the question itself is quite deep into the subject of coral reef. It's asking coral reef depletion, bleaching, deadly outbreak. So I don't think there is a need to explain what coral reefs are. Anyway, one thing is, when you are explaining bleaching, you already have to give that zooxanthellae is being expelled. So in that case, if you are giving it in the introduction, you should make sure that you do not repeat that again in the point of bleaching or in the dimension of bleaching. So you can give that as well, but then you should try to avoid duplication. You should try maximum to avoid. Another point that I would mention is that writing and conclusion, do not duplicate your points. Do not write the same matter that's in the introduction in the content or in the conclusion. There should be different points. There should not be any repetition. Same thing with regard to the statement that is being made in the question. Do not try to repeat the statement that is being made in the question. Just add a different dimension of that statement, or explain it, or maybe add some statistics or examples to embellish the point in the statement. So if you're not going to repeat it, you can actually give the definition of coral reef. But then again, you will have to explain ocean warming and global warming. Then you have to get it. So I think, anyway, there are no hard and fast rules. You can try your own style of answer writing. If it results in a good structure, I think it will be fine. So thing to remember is, do not repeat, do not result in repetition of points. So that is that. Okay. All right. So I think I'll go to another. This is a mock test I gave some time back. These are not model answers or the best answers. I'll just examine my answers. I'll point out the drawbacks as well. I will point out which are the good ones. See, in this answer, you can see I've not given a introduction. Not to be done, I would say introduction is quite important, because that introduces you to the answer. So here I will say the drawback is that I have not given an introduction. How does plate tectonics theory? And another thing with geography is that out of 8 odd questions you might get, some of them are very direct. So if you answer them precisely, giving all the points, you have the potential to score a lot of marks for that. So try to utilize that. And for that, one thing is that you should have read thoroughly in geography. You should have a good grasp of the concepts, if not deep, at least a good grasp of the concepts in geography, especially physical geography part. So that will help you. So here you can see, how does plate tectonic theory help in explaining? It's very straightforward question. I'll just show my answer here. I think this one is a pretty good answer, I feel. So the introduction, again, you can see, you can just break down the question. How does plate tectonic theory help? Again, it's very straightforward. You just have to say how plate tectonics help in formation of Himalayas. So introduction can be a brief explanation of plate tectonic theory. So plate tectonics propose that it's composed of giant lithospheric plates floating on a semi-molten or molten asthenosphere. So that's it. So you can, that's the joinder between plate tectonics. That's not a joinder, that's just the definition of plate tectonics, because this is a straightforward question. And again, you can get into Himalayan formation. So here, so you know where to start. Here I have started with Pangaea. There existed a, I hope it's visible and you can read the question answers. There existed a supercontinent Pangaea. Explained it. Again, here again you can see, because this is a logical stepwise process here. I have mentioned it in logical flow diagram. I have made it. The matter is not important for the purpose of our discussion, so I'm just browsing it through. And Here again, you can see this is something where you can easily add a diagram, because explain. I think there is a diagram in NCERT, and I think this is that diagram which I have drawn here. It's just explaining the Indian subcontinent position, migration of Indian subcontinent, and formation of Himalayas. So that's it. This diagram alone actually explains the mechanism of formation of Himalayas, resultant orientation external, Indian plate continues to move. Again, here also you can see, because it's straightforward, there is no much matter. Adding a map to it can enhance the content of your answer. And one more point I would like to make is that when you're drawing maps or diagrams, try to label them well and in a manner that can be easily understood. Your maps and diagrams should not be just drawings, but try to add information or facts to the maps and diagrams that will make them much more much more informative. So from the diagram alone itself, you can get a sense of your answer. Again, this requires practice while you are writing answers, or while you are giving your essays, while you are making notes. Try to add diagrams consciously. Make a conscious decisions to add diagrams to your geography answers at least, and try to label them in an informative manner. Brief but informative manner. Next is enumerate the causes. Current affairs sources. Yeah, I'll get to it, Raju. I'll just finish this answer writing part, and then we can move to that sources. Causes and impact of soil degradation. Again, it's a straightforward question. Here you can give the introduction, what degradation, causes of soil degradation have been asked directly. So you have here, again, you should see, another thing you should see is here, enumerate the causes, impact of soil degradation, list down the measures. So you have 3 parts to this question, and it's just a 10-mark question. Again, you might know n number of reasons of causes impact, but since it's around 3.33 marks for each part, you should try to limit the answer you're trying to make. Probably, so I've tried to, here I've just not tried to explain a lot each part's causes. So that is another thing you have to do when you are trying to analyze the question. See how many parts are there in the question, see, and the breakdown is very important. If it's 10 marks and it has 3 or 4 parts, then you should realize that you cannot write a lot for each of the parts. That's another thing we should take into consideration while seeing the question. Because there is a lot to write in this, I have not added a diagram, but again, for soil degradation in India, you can add a map of it. You can show the areas where soil degradation is high, where there is soil degradation. Okay, again, another very straightforward question from physical geography. So most of the points which I'm trying to make now is with regards to physical geography. In GS1, I think you can expect out of 8 questions on average, probably at least 3 to 4 questions from physical geography, and probably remaining 4, you'll get a mix of Indian geography and human geography. And physical geography, if you're thorough concepts, it's a place you can score very high. So remember that and prepare in that fashion. Here the question is, discuss the conditions required for the formation of a tropical cyclone. That's the first part of the question. How is a bomb cyclone different from a normal cyclone? That's the second part of the question. It's a 15 marks question. First question is pretty straightforward. I'm sure if you have read NCERT, I think there are around 5 to 6 points mentioned, conditions required for formation of tropical cyclone. But again, it's a 15 marks question. So you have to add something more. Just writing the conditions might not be enough for you to score good marks. So here, introduction, I've given as the definition of tropical cyclone. Conditions, again, those 5 points, it's straightforward: warm water, moisture, wind shear, low vertical wind shear, existing pressure differences, Coriolis effect. So these, but again, so this is all that is required for answering the first part. So I have just added the diagram of tropical cyclone, and you can see here I have labeled it so that the diagram becomes more informative. How the cyclone, what is the structure of the cyclone, and just small explainers or joinders regarding what is going on in this diagram. And to be frank, I don't think I had much of an idea at that time how is a bomb cyclone different from a normal cyclone. So I wouldn't go to that part. Ontogenesis. Again, this I had written in points where if you can address differences is to make 2 columns, so you can compare and contrast the properties of 2 things. So in order to write such an answer, I think you should have much more graphs. You have to clearly compare and contrast. So if you have such a clear idea, I think to attempt or to give a good answer for differentiation between 2 things is to make 2 columns and you compare and contrast the points under 2 heads. So if you have a good idea of the differences, I suggest you can do that. That will actually address the demand of the question very well, and it will give a good, concise, precise answer. Next is another question. So I'll just finish off this part with this answer. This is what do you understand by Indian Ocean dipole? Again, very straightforward. Explain the mechanism of Indian Ocean dipole and explain its impact on monsoon rains in India. Again, 2 parts to the question. First is, what is Indian Ocean dipole? 3 parts actually. What is Indian Ocean dipole? Then second, mechanism. So how is Indian Ocean dipole, how it works? And third part is explain its impact on monsoon rain. So you can just break down maybe 5 marks each. You can write 1 page each on each part of the question. Again, start with an introduction. Then mechanism again. So here what I've done is rather than just give an explanation, I've drawn diagrams and labeled them to give a better picture of what Indian Ocean dipole is. But my one suggestion after seeing this answer now is that probably you can write the writing first and then place the diagram rather than placing the diagram first. It's up to you. So I feel probably I should have added the diagram after the explanation I gave. And I've explained here what is Indian Ocean dipole. I've just the definition I've just added as a introduction and then gone to the mechanism directly and explained it quite in not a very brief fashion, but quite extensively, and mentioned positive and negative Indian Ocean dipoles and then impact on monsoon as well. Again, I've added 1 more diagram here. So you can see most of the Indian geography questions and physical geography questions, you can add diagrams and maps. Okay, I think this is the basic structure how to answer a geography question. I'll just briefly mention them again. Introduction, body, conclusion. Introduction, you can either, it can be a link between the statement and the body or content you are trying to make, or it can be an explanation of the statement, or it can be what to say, embellishing the statement with facts and figures, statistics, or case studies. Then you get to the body where you address the major requirement of the question. See how many parts are there in the question, see the marks or the word limit, and try to frame how much you want to write in each part. Always, it may not be that you need to divide it equally. Some part might require more explanation or more words than the other part. So try to keep that also in mind. Then try to address the each dimension, each part of the question, add multiple dimensions. My suggestion is that you write in points. Geography, most of the questions, if not all, I would say most of the questions you can write it in points. Then in places where there is a geographical or map based, or where you can add a map, a relevant map, try to add a map. If there is a physical explainer or a process or mechanism involved, try to add a diagram. Again, mostly I was referring to physical geography. When it comes to human geography or economic geography, again, you can add maps. Economic geography, especially if it's location of certain industries or related to agriculture or related to resources. All these questions you can add a map. Probably I might have some examples. I think a question was there 2 years back, last year. 2020 question it is. Account for the present location of iron and steel industries away from the source of raw material by giving examples. Account for the location of present iron and steel industries away from raw materials, giving examples. So here it's a location based question. So a map is necessary. It's definitive. In that case, you should add a map. So there again, you should be careful. In the map, they have asked for present day iron and steel industries. So you can definitely have to mark present day, but you can also add older iron and steel industries, which are based on raw materials. In that case, you can give a specific marker for older iron and steel industries are based on raw materials, and you can add a different legend key. You can add a different symbol for new iron and steel industries which are not based on raw material, and this you can add as the legend on them. So that will give a clear-cut idea that older or other industries which are based on raw materials, based on location of raw materials, and the newer ones which are not based on raw materials, then you should try to explain why the newer ones are not based on raw materials. It might be because of port, proximity to port, it might be because proximity to power sources, a number of other reasons. So these things, and if you are again in that map, if you are writing not based on raw materials, if you want, you can also, if you have time, you can also add next to the point you have made this particular reason behind location. That is not, for example, if it's Visakhapatnam, you can say port proximity, you can say that can be mentioned in the map itself. So in economic geography, also try to add maximum maps, diagrams if possible, and in every geography question, you can add flowcharts if you want. If there is a logical sequence of events, if there is a cause and effect relationship, or if there is a chronological sequence, try to make it in flowcharts. You can, one more benefit you get is you need not write it in full sentences, so you can reduce your word limit as well there. So that is with regard to body. Try to be precise, try to address every part of the question, introduce maximum points and dimensions, add maps, diagrams, flowcharts, make those diagrams and maps informative and relevant. And one thing sometimes we do is that we try to put in irrelevant diagrams or maps just for the sake of, I think we should avoid that. Again, how to avoid that is through practice and going through a lot of questions and solutions and practicing it while making notes and while writing test model answers. So I think that is it with regard to answer writing. If you have any specific questions, you can ask them. After this, we can have a mock answer writing session. Any specific questions, please do ask. Meanwhile, I'll answer Raju's question. Enumerate current affairs sources for geography optional, any specific magazine or site. Current affairs for geography is mostly from online. There are no specific sources as far as my preparation was concerned. Thing is, I used to search for case studies with regard to certain topics. Then the other obvious sources are not obvious sources. The obvious updations you need to do are with respect to climate, specifically environment, climate. A lot of reports come up, IPCC report, special reports, regular reports. So if not the full report, try to go through the summaries and try to note down the points, important points, which you can write in your answers. Similarly, in soil, you can go through US soil agriculture department, I think USDA, or Indian IMD. With regards to climate, you can go through IMD's website. And I think a lot of current affairs sites, they give tags, so you can search for geography tags in current affairs, and you can get news that is relevant, geographic news that is relevant, and try to make some of them actually might contain concepts. For example, wildfires were a big news, I think, a couple of years back. So we used to prepare a lot on wildfires, and now monsoons and floods is one of the favorite topics of UPSC. I think floods have been asked every year. So with respect to floods, what you can do is, one, try to identify the mechanism of floods. Sorry, try to study the mechanism of floods in India, then vulnerable locations, make maps of it. Around, as far as I remember, around 40% of India, some 12%, I'm not sure, flood-prone areas. There is a map of flood-prone areas in India. Draw that map, practice it. Then urban flooding is come up. So try to search for the places which have had urban floods in the recent years. I think almost all major cities have had. And I think 2020 had a question, million plus cities, flooding in million plus cities, especially smart cities. So urban flooding, rainfall, variations in rainfall, global warming, climate change. These are hot topics as far as GS1 geography is concerned. So you can research more. Just search these words, try to find out articles and new updates on these topics, and note down the points so that you can use them. Specific magazine or site, I think I mentioned some of them. Down to Earth, again, with regards to environment, is a very good magazine. If you, at least if you don't read it fully, try to pick out some good articles from that, and you will definitely get some points which you can use in their answers. I think we can, shall we go for an answer writing session? Nikhil sir? Yes. Okay. I think I've picked out a few questions from 2020 GS1 paper. I'll give one physical geography question and one economic geography, human geography question. Shall we have an answer writing session? Okay. Anyway, yes. So I'll just, what we'll do is, One is a 10-mark question and the other is a 15-mark question. So we'll have 10-mark question, 15-mark question, around 16 minutes. You can write your answers and I'll just go through two model answers which are with me, and you can just compare. So I'll give the questions. Just give me 1 minute. Meanwhile, if you have any specific doubts, you can ask them. I think interactive session would actually help you more than me just saying out these points.
Hello, sir.
Did someone ask something?
Yeah, sir. Did you have any frameworks in mind so that you can generate points for geography, or did you just study everything? How was
Framework in the sense of writing the answer.
for point generation?
See, one thing in geography is it's not a particular framework. For example, for physical geography, once you are thorough with the concepts, you have all the points with you. You need not have a particular framework for writing those answers. Only when it's with regard to questions you don't know a lot, maybe you need something. But I didn't get your full point in the sense of what framework did you mean?
Say if a question comes in general, we have like for spec and like spectral like models like that, right? So for physical geography, do you have any like in society we have economics, polity, we generate points like that? So
okay, no, as far as my writing was concerned, I didn't have. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure how much having a set framework helps you, because questions can be very dynamic. Sometimes sometimes you get very direct questions, or you don't have to structure a lot. But sometimes they are very indirect, or they might have multiple dimensions. So in that case, having a set framework, I think, might be difficult. But one framework I believe which we can have is try to address the question, but there should be a logical fashion in which you write the answer. It should not be disconnected. You should not jump into the body at first. For that, you need to have an introduction, which will be a connector, or probably in the body, you should try to explain it. For example, if you're writing points, try to write the most relevant points first, and that can be followed. Do not, for example, if it's percentage wise or something, try to give the most important. If it's causes, so try to write the most important cause in the first and the least important cause last. So I think that's the general method. Framework as such, if I did not have, and I think with lots of practice, even you will get that organic way of writing answers. Probably someone else might have tried this framework or specific these things. I'm not aware of it. I personally did not use such a framework.
okay, sir. Thanks.
Cover perspectives in human geography. So my basic material was the classroom notes I took from iLearn. Then extra, I think it's Majid Hussain has a geographical thought book on geographical thought. So that was added material, and third one was value added material from iLearn. It's quite comprehensive. So that's not a GS question, so I don't think I'll take a lot of time answering that. Okay, I'll answer this at last. I think we should stick to GS first. Maybe after our session, I'll answer it separately, geography optional related questions. So now I'll just give the questions. I think we'll do just 2 questions. People have already started leaving, so probably we'll stop with 2 questions. So I'll just put them up, share screen. You can take both are 10 marks questions. You can take 7 plus 7, extra 1 minute, 15 minutes to write these 2 questions. So it's 4:55. We'll start the discussion by 5:10. Okay, I think our time is up. Before we get into this, if anyone would like to share an introduction, a good introduction, if you feel it's a good introduction, you can share it. Because again, there is no single good answer, no single good introduction. There are multiple good answers and multiple good introductions, multiple ways also to write introduction. So if any one of you feel like you want to share or you want to just see how you gave your introduction, you can share. If not, we'll move to a model answer, which I have here.
Sir, for the second question, can I read the introduction?
Yes, please.
The unemployment in India currently stands at 6.8% as per PLFS survey, and COVID-19 has exacerbated this. And in this scenario, regional resource-based manufacturing can help promote employment. And then 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's a good way to make an introduction. I think Varun has given a statistical viewpoint into the employment scenario in India. So the question is on promoting employment in India. So he has given the statistical figure of unemployment in India, and in the background of COVID with high unemployment, this particular strategy can help improve employment generation. And so I think naturally your major point would be it can actually help, and you would give the points first. Right, Varun?
Yes, sir. And I'll just mention challenges in the end.
Yeah, that's fine. But overall, since you have given such an introduction, your main initial part would be that it would help and will substantiate how it would help, and later challenges. So that is a good way to give an introduction. One district, one product scheme. That's also a good introduction. That's a bit more micro manufacturing, maybe one district, one product, but it can also be a point in this regional resource-based product manufacturing, especially small industries, cottage industries, small industries. Definitely, that can be a good point. One district, one product, you can actually add in conclusion as well, because resource-based manufacturing might be a bit more expansive than a one district, one product scheme. So it's a good product to it's a good point to add in conclusion as well, or as a case study also. So now we'll see what the model answer given is and the perspectives how to approach this answer. Again, see that this is a very general, it doesn't look like a geography question. So how to make it into a geography answer is also a technique or something which we should try to do from geography perspective. I think first question is pretty straightforward. Geophysical characteristics of circum-Pacific zone. Uh, so you have to explain what circum-Pacific zone is there. In this question, a map is must. You have to identify the circum-Pacific zone, and if you are mentioning circum-Pacific zone, you have to mention what plate tectonics should be mentioned, and then you can go to the characteristics. So introduction can probably be an explanation of plate tectonics, and let's see what has been given. So here we have a deconstruction of the question. Core is circum-Pacific zone. Constraint is geophysical characteristics. What we require is the geophysical characteristics, and directive is discuss. It's an open-ended discuss question. Introduction is define circum-Pacific zone. Body map is must, and then geophysical characteristics, and conclusion can be significance of the zone, or it can also be a recent event. Also, you can add regarding to the circum-Pacific zone. It can be a volcanic eruption. It can be anything. So introduction is ring of fire. It's also called ring of fire. That is 1 point you get. Also referred to as circum-Pacific belt is a zone along the or surrounding the Pacific Ocean characterized by active volcanoes and frequent earthquakes. Majority of Earth's volcanoes and earthquakes take place along the ring of fire. So that is the introduction. So now coming to the body, draw the diagram. Here we have a diagram of it. And geophysical characteristics, it's an area where large Pacific plate meets many surrounding tectonic plates such as Nazca. So if you're giving this point, you can make your diagram more informative by just adding the plates. Pacific Ocean, you can mention Pacific plate, you can mention probably Asian or Indian Australian plate, South American plate, North American plate. It's a zone. And one more thing about diagrams is, as I mentioned, make the diagram informative, but do not make it quite crowded so that it's difficult. It should be easy to the eyes. You have to have clearly discernible information, relevant information on the map. Do not make it a junk full of information so that it's difficult to read. So try to find that balance when you are drawing a map or a diagram. It should have adequate information, not more. So that is also a point. It's a zone of convergent, divergent, as well as transform plate boundary. These are all very straightforward points here. Area of intense volcanic activity. Here, an example has been given: Mount Fuji, Mount Helen. So if you are giving these examples, you can just maybe label it on the map as well to give an idea of the circum-Pacific zone. Houses most of the subduction zones of the planet. Subduction zone is a collision between, maybe that explanation, if you have time, you can give it. Probably maybe you can skip it. Circum-Pacific seismic belt is the world's greatest earthquake belt. That's a very good point, because over 85% of Earth's earthquakes occur along this path, characterized by ocean trenches, mountain trenches, and hydrothermal vents, Mariana Trench. Conclusion given here is, since the circum-Pacific zone is an area of intense volcanic and seismic activity, it plays an important role in the study of interior. This is a good model answer. It's very brief, specific, and there is a map also which you can draw. And if anyone has any extra points to add, good points which you think you might help your fellow students, you can add them as well. Can we mention weather phenomenon like El Nino? I would suggest not to add, because that is a climate related event, and this is regarding geophysical characteristics. It's not climatological. Circum-Pacific zone is a geomorphological concept or geomorphological zone. So I would say better not to add El Nino to it. That's my perspective, at least. Do anyone have anything else to add, extra points or some things you think can be added? As I told again, there is no single good answer. There is no single good introduction or conclusion. You can add anything.
So perhaps we can add content conversion.
Can you speak out more louder?
Maybe we can add ocean continent convergence.
Yes, definitely. That's also, you can add ocean continent convergence. You can also mention Benioff zone if you want. You can mention island arcs, because I think at least geography optional students will be aware of continent cycle by Tuzo Wilson. So there is a ocean continent convergence, island arc formation, all these things are there. So if you have time and if you feel you're not going to exceed the word limit, these two conditions are very important. You should have time and you should not exceed word limit. A friend of mine this year got negative marks for exceeding word limit. So just be careful there. But these are good points. Presence of 4 mountains with examples, yes, definitely. In conclusion, can we mention the geopolitical significance? In this question, in my opinion, I don't think geopolitical significance is required. Probably more you can write if you want to add a perspective of current affairs. It might be disaster wise in terms of volcanic explosions or earthquakes, or maybe so my suggestion would be add that dimension rather than geopolitical significance, because it's a very geomorphological concept. So that's my answer to iPhone. Okay. So I think we'll move to the next question. Strategy of regional resource. I think we have got two introductions to. So we'll go to the deconstruction of the question. Core is regional resource-based manufacturing, and constraint is also with based manufacturing with employment generation. Directive is, can it help? So as I think Varun mentioned earlier, it can help, but there are challenges or there are constraints. That will be the general direction of the answer, I think, standard answer. So here manufacturing sector contribution has been mentioned. Varun mentioned unemployment. It can be either, I feel, because strategy of regional resource based manufacturing. So it's good if you start with introduction with manufacturing, but since the directives regarding employment, you can start with that as well, but that can be added in conclusion as well. It all depends on you again. How you structure is more important. Here it's written manufacturing sector currently contributes 16% of India's GDP, and government aims at increasing contribution 25. Another method that comes to another approach comes to my mind is, since India leapfrogged this manufacturing, our employment generation in manufacturing is low. So regional resource based manufacturing can help in promote. So that also can be a direction in which you can structure your introduction. Manufacturing in India currently does not contribute to the potential employment opportunities, and regional resource based manufacturing can be help in doing this. I think if it's geography based, I think you can add a node. I think core periphery, all those models can be added if you want. And again, this has good scope for very good scope for map. So here they have given the map. So you can add different portions. Iron and steel dependent industry, you can add areas where regional resources and specific industries have come up. Here dairy industry you can see, here tire manufacturing, iron and steel industry. I think in West Bengal you can write jute. In Northeast you can put textiles, automobiles you can put here, dairy. Then I think here you can put steel and cotton textile industry can be put here. So you have a good scope for adding, for drawing a map and how it can help in employment generation. So this is the crux of the question. Can it help? So you have to mention the ways in which it can help. So that is very important. You have to mention how regional resource based manufacturing in comparison to normal manufacturing. So what are the extra points or the advantages of regional resource-based manufacturing in employment generation. So it has been addressed very well in this model answer. Cost cutting because of proximity, so more employees can be hired. Expertise can be developed, which will create more employments. There can be specialization with respect to that particular industry, which can increase the size of the industry and therefore more employment. So more skilled and unskilled labor. Then development of supply chain, that is backward and forward linkages, you can say, if it's a leading industry or if it's a good industry. For example, iron and steel industry in Jamshedpur, that Chotanagpur belt, you can give that as an example, which created a lot of forward and backward linkages, creating multiple employment opportunities, increased demand in local consumer goods. So see this. So this is again a very logical question. It's not a very straightforward one. Here you have to identify how regional resource-based manufacturing as opposed to general manufacturing industry helps in promoting employment. Good way to general employment. And again, I think Varun's introduction can also serve as a good conclusion in a COVID restrained society with high unemployment. We have to have a leading or trigger point, which can be regional resource-based manufacturing. One district, one product can be mentioned. So all these things can be mentioned. So I think we have had two. There are two model questions. I'd like to just go through them, or shall we find? I think you would like to wind up, right? Anyway, if someone is interested, I will just run through these questions. The process of these are all questions from 2020 and 2019 mains exams. The process of desertification does not have climate boundaries. Justify with examples. Here, the crux of the question is that desertification is not limited to a specific climate. It happens across various climatic conditions and climatic geographies. So that should be the crux of your answer. So introduction can be definition of desertification, probably extent of desertification. You can also give statistics with regarding this much amount of land is being converted into desert daily. If any report is there, you can bring those reports. Probably there will be a UNCCD report, so you can just mention UNCCD in the introduction if you want, or probably in conclusion. Then causes of desertification beyond climatic boundaries, necessities to address. So it's a definition of desertification. And I feel there are two approaches here. Here there is a cost-based explanation that deforestation is in tropical Amazon regions of Brazil, main cause of desertification. Soil erosion. So this is tropical equatorial climate. Deforestation can be the main reason, at least in Amazon. Soil erosion in Aravalli is probably temperate climate. Climate change resulting in expanse fertile temperate regions in China. China type climate can be climate change. Urbanization, probably in many other loss of soil fertility in semi-arid regions, grasslands, savanna places. So this is cost-based. Another approach is you can identify, since they have asked for examples, you can directly go to climatic type. For example, for example, tropical, you can write tropical equatorial climate. Causes of desertification is deforestation and soil erosion. In temperate region, causes is this. So it can also be another way of writing it, showing that desertification and not. So this is and I think here you can definitely bring in UNCCD, and you can also draw a map here. Here map has not been given. Here definitely, since your answer has specific geographical locations, you can draw the map and just mention these points. Again, it's a 10-mark question, so you should model accordingly.
Sir, in this question, should we mention a separate way forward, or is it okay to just mention it in the conclusion? Or should there be a separate subheading for how we can solve a certificate?
I mean, in my opinion, I don't think you should give a separate heading as way forward. It's best to do it in conclusion. Unless it's specifically asked what is the way forward, I think it would be better just to add it as a conclusion. But again, it depends on you. My opinion is that if not specifically asked, way forward can be included in your conclusion or joined to your conclusion.
Okay.
While preparing notes, we'll definitely prepare, or while preparing, we prepare as way forward. But while writing, I feel it's better to add it in conclusion. There is just one more question which I have, maybe the interlinking of rivers. I will not go through the model answer. Maybe we'll just run through it. Interlinking of rivers provides viable solutions to the multi-dimensional interrelated problems of droughts, floods, and interrupted navigation critically examined. This is one question that has so many dimensions to answer. Interlinking of rivers is there, and problems are droughts, floods, and interrupted navigation, and it's critically examined. That means you have to give the pros and you have to give the cons. So introduction is defined interlinking. It can also be national perspective plan of India can also be added in the introduction if you want. How can it solve flood and drought? How can bring uninterrupted navigation concern, other concerns? So what is the solution? And this is a good method here, because there are three issues. Floods and droughts can be linked, because interlinking aims to do exactly the same. It aims to bring water from water surplus basins to water deficit basins. So it simultaneously addresses the issue of flood and drought. So that is a good way to address this question, and it has been done in this model answer. Water surplus basin to water deficit. Ken Betwa. Uninterrupted navigation, how it will help. And then you should say critical analysis. What are the concerns regarding interlinking? Environmental impact is there, expenses there, social issues, all these things can be added. And I think you can definitely add national perspective plan of India regarding interlinking of rivers, that is peninsular and extra peninsular rivers. And a map also can be drawn. At least you can mention Polavaram, Godavari Krishna interlink, Ken Betwa link, and Satluj Yamuna link maybe. And coming up, you can also give, I think there are already some projects in the pipeline, prospective projects that can also be mentioned if you have time and words. So I hope you have got something with regards to answer writing. If there is any specific doubts, you can ask.
Now, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and you can ask the questions. So I understand that Mithun has extensively covered GS geography answer writing, and he has shown you some model answers, and he made you to structure the answers as well. So still, if you have any questions, you can come up with a question.
Sir, I think some had geography optional doubts. I think they can stay back probably for 10 minutes and I can answer them.
Okay. So geography optional students can stay back if you want to ask them questions later to optional. Okay. Yes, geography optional students can ask questions like,
I
you
think
have any.
Raju had the question.
Yeah.
Geography optional rewarding dynamism. Yeah, that's definitely there. I think it's there with respect to every optional. But one thing you can follow is to have a broad read, extensive reading of the subject, cover the syllabus for sure, and also try to cover syllabus from I also try to cover topics from out of the syllabus, especially those areas which have been asked in the past 5 years. I think UPSC optionals have gone out of the syllabus. Some topics have come out of the syllabus. So try to cover them. So your weapon is that you read extensively, so you can attempt an easy paper as well as a difficult paper, and give a lot of, try to update yourself with new examples, case studies, uh, all those. So it's rewarding for me. It certainly rewarded even after some time. So I think that is the answer for that. So I feel main thing is broad reading, extensive reading, broad reading from various sources. I cannot mention specific sources because mostly I searched in Google, uh, tried to get a sense of authenticity, and then noted down points from multiple sources across Google, official sources of the government departments, IMD, USDA, UNCCD, UNFCC, uh, then magazines like Down to Earth. So, and clarify your concepts if you have doubts, especially geomorphology, climatology. I think some concepts may be not very strong. So, uh, clear them, strengthen those concepts. And climatology also, there have been a leaning to climatology in GS as well, especially floods, rainfall, all these. So prepare extensively on those subjects as well. Questions like Halloween storms. These are, I don't think there is any specific preparation. If you have a broad reading and if you are lucky, you might come across them. I couldn't attempt Halloween storm this year. I think whatever I wrote was not correct. So I don't think there is a strategy for that. If you are so well read, probably, and if you are lucky, you can answer those one-off questions. But don't be worried about it. Will be just one question or two questions at the maximum. Probably for 10 marks, 15 marks. You can, with a fair bit of reading extensively, you can attempt 90-95% of the questions without any issues. So don't be worried about those questions. While selecting questions in optional, the thing is, you have to select 3 out of 6 questions, and you have to write all the sub questions. So first you have to see which of the questions you can write the best. So what I use is, if I can write 2 questions out of 2 sub questions out of 3, very good, and the third one pretty okay, I'll select that question. Or if I can write, if there are 2 difficult questions, then I immediately leave it. So again, that is, you can use that strategy. If you can write 2 out of 3 very well and 1 pretty okay, then I think it's a good strategy to select that. If you can write all 3 pretty well, then there is no doubt you can obviously select that. So how many of the sub questions you can write very good and you can write okay, and you don't know, if there is one question which you don't know at all, then probably you can leave it. It's because that will be 15 marks at least, I think. Yeah. Abhijit, I hope I answered your question. I guess so.
Any more questions?
So I think then we can conclude.
I think we'll wind up the session. And it was a wonderful session. Thank you, Mithun. Thank you for your time. And I guess the students who are writing mains this year definitely would have benefited from this session. And all the very best, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. All the best.